The relentless search for meaning is an intrinsic characteristic of the human experience. From the earliest records of ancient civilizations to the present day, humans have sought answers to the great question, what is the purpose of life? However, over the centuries, with the advancement of science and the gradual loss of religious certainties, many have found themselves immersed in a landscape of perplexity and uncertainty, with no definitive answer to this quest. What was once attributed to a divine authority or an immutable truth is now presented as a question without a clear answer, leading many to a state of nihilism, the belief that life has no purpose or meaning. Modern scientism, by demystifying many elements previously attributed to divinity, has not provided consolation for everyone. While it has driven remarkable progress in fields such as medicine and technology, science has not answered the existential anxieties that arise from the deepest questions about human existence. The loss of religious certainty, rather than liberating. The Spirit seems to have stripped humanity of a greater sense of meaning, opening an abyss of emptiness. When life lacks a transcendent explanation or a higher purpose, what remains is the stark reality of an existence without direction. In this void, the repetitive nature of daily routines and the endless cycle of the same actions seem to lead individuals to a state of exhaustion and existential despair. What was once a search for something greater now reveals itself as an endless pursuit with no clear objective. It is in this context that the philosophy of absurdism, proposed by Albert Camus, emerges as a way to confront the human condition. Rather than offering a pessimistic outlook or an escape into religious consolation, Camus reveals the true essence of life through his concept of the absurd. For him, the absurd is the fundamental conflict between humanity's desire to find meaning in life and the indifference of the universe, which offers no answers to these questions. The absurd, according to Camus, is not a failure of human beings to understand life, but an intrinsic feature of existence itself. In their constant search for answers and explanations, humans collide with the vastness of a universe that remains silent. This emptiness, created by the absence of a definitive purpose, generates a sense of discomfort that can easily be mistaken for despair or meaninglessness. However, for Camus, this is the starting point of a philosophical reflection that does not deny the value of life, but affirms it in a different way. At the core of Camus' absurdism is the idea that life, no matter how disorienting or devoid of meaning it may seem, is not condemned to apathy or despair. The French philosopher suggests that instead of succumbing to the temptation of nihilism, which cowers before life's emptiness, we should confront the absurd head-on without illusions. The awareness that the universe is indifferent to our aspirations and that the meaning we seek will not be found in any higher being or transcendental explanation is, paradoxically, what grants us true freedom. If the cosmos is indifferent to our search for meaning, then we are not bound by a predetermined destiny or an imposed purpose. In a way, we are free to construct our own meaning and make our existence something worth living. This pursuit of freedom and acceptance of the absence of a higher purpose is exemplified in Camus' famous allegory of the myth of Sisyphus. The figure of Sisyphus, condemned by the gods to roll a boulder up a mountain, only to watch it roll back down repeatedly, represents the endless and often futile search for meaning. In many cases, this image can be seen as a metaphor for everyday life, where people find themselves trapped in routines and expectations that never seem to reach a definitive resolution. However, for Camus, the true tragedy is not in the futility of Sisyphus' task, but in the way he relates to it. Camus suggests that although Sisyphus' task is endless and without reward, he finds his own form of happiness by accepting his condition and embracing his struggle. Happiness, therefore, does not lie in an ultimate achievement or final purpose, but in the struggle itself. in the process of living with awareness of the absurd. Sisyphus, by no longer seeking anything beyond the present moment and by accepting the pain and futility of his existence, transcends suffering and finds a certain kind of freedom. This radical acceptance of the absurd, the realization that life has no clear purpose and that the search for meaning is ultimately in vain, offers a way to be happy even in an indifferent world. Instead of seeking solace in external ideologies or promises of eternal meaning, Camus suggests that we should focus on life as it is, with all its irrationality, chaos, and lack of explanation. Recognizing the absurd does not prevent us from living fully. On the contrary, it calls us to embrace each moment, to find joy in the small details of everyday life, and to value human experiences precisely because they are finite and imperfect. This perspective is not a condemnation to despair, but a liberation from the endless pursuit of definitive answers. By accepting the absence of meaning and the vastness of the universe, we can finally grasp true freedom, the freedom to live our lives authentically, without being bound to an incessant search for answers that will never come. Albert Camus' philosophy offers us a profoundly human lesson. We can indeed be happy, even in a world that seems indifferent to our concerns and desires. This happiness is not found in a transcendental purpose, but in the acceptance of the absurd, and the ability to live intensely, without illusions, embracing who we are and what we have, despite the vastness of the universe around us. The myth of Sisyphus, as presented by Albert Camus, is one of the most powerful metaphors for the human condition within the philosophy of absurdism. The story of a man condemned by the gods to push a boulder up a mountain, only for it to roll back down repeatedly, is a portrait of humanity's struggle against an indifferent world. For Camus, life is often like this endless and futile task, an incessant search for meaning that never fully materializes, a constant attempt to reach a purpose that will never be completely attained. Sisyphus, seemingly trapped in a cycle of endless effort, reflects the human experience of trying to make sense of an existence that, at first glance, offers no definitive answers. But contrary to what it may initially seem, Sisyphus' condition is not merely a tragedy. Camus proposes that by embracing this reality of constant effort without reward, Sisyphus finds a paradoxical freedom. The boulder, for Camus, is not a burden that makes life unbearable, but a symbol of human effort, a metaphor for all our daily struggles in search of meaning. At its core, the futility of Sisyphus' task reveals something profound about human freedom. We are not bound by a predetermined destiny or a cosmic purpose. The boulder, which never reaches the mountain's peak, paradoxically becomes the key to our freedom. True freedom for Camus does not lie in discovering a universal or transcendental meaning to life, but in accepting that life has no inherent meaning. The universe, as Sisyphus comes to understand, is indifferent to our struggles. There is no grand plan, no absolute truth that we must attain. What exists is the continuous effort of living, struggling, seeking, and experiencing. Accepting this state of things, far from being a condemnation, is a liberation. When we abandon the search for something beyond ourselves, something that would justify our suffering and our actions, we can finally recognize that we are free to create our own purpose. This freedom is not an unrestricted freedom of action or an escape from reality, but a freedom of choice within what is truly ours. By accepting that there is no universal and immutable meaning, we can begin to build a personal purpose, one that comes from our own will and desire. Sisyphus' effort, which is never truly in vain, becomes an act of freedom. Each time he pushes the boulder, he affirms himself. He chooses, in a way, to be faithful to his task. It is this choice, this decision to continue, that gives his life meaning. It is not a meaning imposed from the outside, but one that he creates in each moment, in the tireless repetition of his action, this concept of freedom and the creation of one's own purpose allows us to see life differently. If the search for meaning once felt like a burden, it now becomes a choice. Human suffering, the constant search, and the challenges of daily life can be seen not as purposeless struggles, but as essential elements in the construction of our individual meaning. The acceptance of the absurd, the absence of a transcendent. Meaning frees us from the obligation to seek definitive answers and allows us to embrace life as it is. We can find meaning in our actions, in our relationships, in love, work, art, friendship, and even in adversity. By accepting that the universe owes us no answers, that it has no plan for us, we paradoxically find the greatest freedom. The freedom to be who we are, to create our purpose, and to act in the world without the pressure of a grand cosmic answer. This is the core of Camus' philosophy. Life is not futile because it lacks a universal meaning. It becomes futile only if we try to impose a meaning that does not exist. And in accepting this, we can do something far more important: live fully. Within the absurd, find pleasure in what we do and embrace our daily actions and decisions. By adopting this perspective on life, we can transform the feeling of futility and endless effort into a true source of power. Instead of succumbing to despair in the face of a silent universe, we can choose to act, to search, and to assign value to our own experiences. Life, then, takes on a new shape. It is not about chasing a grand finale or a higher purpose, but about appreciating and celebrating the small moments that happen every day. This is the turning point in our reflection on Camus' philosophy. The freedom he proposes is not an abstract concept, but something that manifests concretely in our actions and choices. It is not a call to inaction, but to authentic action, an action taken not in expectation of some transcendental reward, but for the sake of the act itself. And it is in this doing that we find the true meaning of freedom, a freedom that does not need justification, but asserts itself in every small gesture, in every movement we make against fate, and in the appreciation of the simple joys of daily life. Albert Camus' philosophy, with its concept of absurdism, might initially seem like a pessimistic view of life. However, when we delve deeper into his ideas, we realize that they offer a unique form of freedom that can be practically applied to everyday life. The key is to abandon the relentless search for transcendental meaning and instead embrace life as it is, a continuous process of action, choice, and experience. By accepting the absurd, the fact that the universe is indifferent to our desire for purpose, we discover a new way to live, one that is lighter and more authentic. The first step in applying Camus' ideas to daily life is to abandon the what if. The what if is the great villain of our minds, a cycle of doubt that keeps us stuck in the past and prevents us from acting in the present. What if I fail? What if I never find my path? What if my life has no meaning? These questions paralyze us, keeping us in a constant state of uncertainty and preventing us from moving forward. Camus, through his philosophy of the absurd, invites us to replace what if with why not? Why not try? Why not live? Why not enjoy life, even without a greater purpose? By adopting this rebellious mindset against fate, our relationship with life changes radically. Instead of waiting for something to give us an answer or a meaning, we begin to explore the possibilities of the present. The why not attitude pushes us to act, to try, to venture forward without fear of failure or the unknown. This doesn't mean we should be reckless or impulsive, but rather that we should live with an open mind, embracing new experiences without the burden of justifying our actions in pursuit of some ultimate purpose. True Camusian freedom is not the absence of obstacles or the search for definitive answers, but the freedom to be who we are, to live authentically, and to build our own meaning through our choices. This doesn't mean living irresponsibly or without aspirations, but rather recognizing that the universe does not demand a grand justification for our actions. We can simply live. The simple act of living in itself is meaningful, and it is. In this simple yet profound shift in mindset that we find the key to true happiness. Camus does not propose a happiness built on grand achievements or an endless pursuit of success. For him, true happiness lies in the small joys of everyday life, those simple moments that often go unnoticed amid the chaos of our existential concerns. Imagine the pleasure of a warm cup of coffee in the morning, the comfort of spontaneous laughter with friends, or the pleasant sensation of the sun on your skin during a peaceful walk. These small experiences, for Camus, are what truly matter. By valuing these moments, we begin to live the present more intensely and fully. The absurdity of life does not condemn us to an existence without joy. On the contrary, it frees us from the endless search for a grand purpose and allows us to focus on what truly matters, the direct experience of being alive. When we accept the absurd and let go of the pressure for cosmic meaning, we realize that life, in its simplicity, is already rich enough to bring us pleasure and satisfaction. Another fundamental aspect of this practical philosophy is the rejection of social pressures regarding status, success, and failure. In our society, we are constantly bombarded with the idea that we must reach certain milestones, such as a successful career, an ideal relationship, or the pursuit of some utopian happiness to be considered accomplished. However, by embracing Camus' perspective, we see that these external expectations are nothing more than distractions pulling us away from the true experience of living. The value of life does not lie in external achievements or social comparisons, but in our ability to live authentically without the need for external validation. By rejecting these pressures, life becomes simpler and more genuine. We are no longer trapped by others' expectations or the pursuit of an imposed ideal of success. True strength, then, lies in continuing to live, in embracing the absurdity of existence, and in finding satisfaction in everyday experiences. Every small action, every moment lived with intensity, gains intrinsic value, not because it fits into some grand plan, but because it is part of our personal journey. Ultimately, when we reflect on how accepting the absurd can bring us closer to genuine happiness, we understand that it is not a passive resignation, but an active liberation. Accepting that life has no cosmic meaning frees us from the obsession with seeking an answer that will never come and allows us to create our own meaning. This kind of freedom is, paradoxically, what brings us closer to true happiness. By embracing the absurd, we can live with more lightness, more gratitude, and more presence. Life, without the need for transcendental justifications, becomes rich and meaningful in its very imperfection. Therefore, Camus' final message is clear. Living the absurd is not an invitation to despair, but to action and acceptance. By embracing this philosophy, we can paradoxically come closer to a truer and more authentic form of happiness. The freedom to create our own meaning and to appreciate the small joys of everyday life is what truly gives us a sense of purpose. In embracing the absurd, we discover that, in fact, we are more alive than ever.